I have in previous podcasts spoken about issues reflecting consciousness. Most psychologists will agree when I say that human consciousness has several levels, such as subconscious and body consciousness. Some consider mind and consciousness to be one and the same, but I disagree. Mind is, in my scheme of thinking, a definition only of the cognitive part of it, the thinking part of it, the sector that interacts on a daily basis with our surroundings, or so to say, our waking consciousness. We are all aware of the fact that a less awake part of our consciousness lies right underneath, influencing our reactions to our surroundings, our thoughts, bringing impulses to the cognitive mind. This less objective and less accessible part of our consciousness is also participate in our dreams and bring visions to the surface. Between the mind and the more subconscious level, there is a continuous flow of information and images that is mostly non-conceptual. It works by images and symbols. Most modern psychologists, since Carl Gustav Jung, agree that underneath and behind the subconscious level, there is a common subconsciousness shared by humanity as a whole. I agree to this and consider that there is two paths emerging from the individual subconsciousness, one to the common subconsciousness and one to the superconscious. The latter is connected by steps all the way through to the cosmic consciousness, while the former ends up in the field of transindividual. I am now going to take you into this transindividual field, but please note that the scheme I use is only in order to illustrate. You may have noticed in your everyday experience that people with more or less the same background tend to react quite much in the same way to any given situation or impulse. Primarily, this has to do with common references. They have been brought up in similar ways, been exposed to much the same social situations and objective experiences, had the same education and possibly been influenced by the dominant religion of their society. In short, they share mostly the same table of references. Usually, this is common knowledge, yet this shared table of references transpires to the transindividual level of consciousness, where it, so to say, coagulates into an egregore. Now you may wonder what an egregore is. Here is the short explanation. It is the manifestation of the transcendental level of conscious elements that are common to groups of people, large or small. A single individual may connect to several egregores depending on a number of factors. Consider that you belong to the common bourgeoisie of your society. You share most of its characteristics, its priorities and choice of lifestyle. At the same time, you take part in the standard Catholic Church, but belong to a small, extreme sectarian congregation. Further, you are in eager participation in a particular political movement, and golf is your passionate hobby, which you share with another class of your society, whereas you abhor the interest for football. Beyond your attachment to the common egregore of your standard bourgeois society, you have attached yourself to three other egregoric constellations: a religious sectarian, a political ideological, and golf that you share with people belonging to another social class. This combination may from the outside seem to indicate some internal conflict. Say if the political ideology you adhere to is in direct opposition to your mingling with the higher class golfers. If, however, you are able to stitch these elements together in a way that is meaningful to you, there will be harmony based on the meaning you create in its defense. Remember, we are all producers of meaning, stitching together our lives. From here we can move into the matter of synchronized minds. Taking part in an egregore will synchronize your mind with others of the same egregore. Its content in the shape of ideology, faith, or understanding of the world is a common denominator, inspiring and driving every individual connected. How do we know this? Have you ever seen people panicking? This is one of the most basic reactions to imminent danger, a deep common reflex in the human transpersonal. It is contagious, we say. It drives each individual in the mass in a very specific way. This is just an illustration of the extreme. I am not going to detail common knowledge here. There is more to see. What most people in any given society consider normal is part of that society's common understanding of the world, and thus integrated in the normal egregore, transpiring into the common subconsciousness, and from it springs the common ideas, norms and conduct, and more. This is so normal that it passes unobserved and is automatically accepted, few questions asked, if any at all. Now you are part of one such society, and part of three particular groups that makes you stand out. Consider that the common society have no problem supporting abortion, even actively supporting, while your sect or congregation is strongly opposing it. The particular religious ideology of the congregation is a prime mover, and you all move in the same action with the protest demonstrations and actions against abortion clinics. This is a real-world case. This ideology has been educated into the minds of each and every member of the congregation as a firm belief, you being one. Convinced by religious faith, you form an egregore and feed with the energy you put into it. Then the egregore feeds energy into all of you as you move into action. Action provides more energy, and soon there is a complete feedback loop. Blind by faith in your purpose, you act like a robot, like an individual in panic. Yet you are only a puppet, unaware of the mechanisms pulling the strings. The whole thing becomes almost unstoppable once you set off. You may have noticed how any movement and its particular ideology is strengthened by mass and action. The more people engage, the more power accumulates on the egregoric level, and action feeds those energies. The more powerful, the more easily you may be sucked into it. Therefore, it is extremely important to be observant, awake, and able to see the movements that takes place on the transpersonal level of consciousness. It is not evident that you are able to do so, yet just being intellectually awake helps a lot. Taking a bird's view of what moves things in your society and the world in general helps a lot. You need to orient yourself and make sure that you are not just dragged into something by persuasive propaganda or charismatic preaching. We have a recent example to recognize these effects: the storming of the Capitol in Washington, D.C. Hundreds of thousands of people were influenced by political propaganda. Due to their disillusionment with the political elite, they were ready for it. It worked. The egregore built quickly on transpersonal levels, and soon there was action, even violent action. It's interesting, and quite a lesson to look to in the rear mirror, and see how many of those fervent protesters were confused in the aftermath. They had been invaded by the spell, had lost their perspective, and lost themselves in the flow of the movement. The transpersonal level of consciousness contains fields that are fed by human emotions, thoughts and ideas, some positive, some negative. Once in place, there are feedback loops developing, and the unaware person may be caught up in any such web. This lack of awareness plays out and thus becomes a major reason human beings are mindlessly directed into any faith, ideology or movement, and the world develops into what we see every day, into an arena of conflict. There is a need for every single individual living today and tomorrow to be awake, to search the bird's eye view, as well as to go deep into his or her consciousnness to reach understanding and even more insights into what may contaminate their cognitive mind from deep below. Only those who do the effort will be able to see clearly and avoid falling into the trap of their own weaknesses. Cognitive blindness is just a whale to let drop away. Mass movements are the result of synchronized minds. So also are small, often extremist movements. Your mind is connected to that which moves the world and society. My message is that you need to stop, disconnect, at least partially, and take a critical bird's eye view of the psychic map. It may provide a new freedom and release you from the blinded masses. Good luck.